Welcome to the Content Creator's Guide. This is a place where we expand our knowledge on what it takes to be successful in an ever-expanding world of content creation. Join me as I sit down with individuals sharing their success stories and tips that help them get over the hurdles they faced on their journey to creation success. All right, let's create. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Content Creator's Guide. I will be your host, Patrick Conway, also known in other circles as Jennasis. Today, we are talking to the co-creator of Two Girls, One Ship and co-host of the uber-popular cyberpunk lorecast. And between the two, they are approaching well over 300,000 downloads. That is a lot. A lot! Anyway, please give a warm welcome to the ever-sensual Jennasis.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm doing really good today. It's been an
great.
awesome day.
I am so glad to have you on today. I don't beat around the bush much. I kind of get right into the show. So I'm going to ask you your first question right off the bat. And that is, what inspired you to get into content creation in the first place?
It's kind of a short story on like how I got into it. It was the pandemic. I was in quarantine. I was gaming a lot, and I was also watching a lot of Twitch streams. And so I was like, ooh, I could do that too. It looks like fun. So I figured out how to run a capture card mirror box from my TV to my laptop. And my bed is one of those really cool ones where you can like push the button and it'll sit up. So I would be sitting up in bed, streaming from my TV and my laptop together, primarily games on the Nintendo Switch. So my first handle for streaming was Switch in Bed. So that way,
You heard it here, folks. She is a gamer from bed.
Mm-hmm.
Every guy's dream, a female gamer, and she's already in bed. I'm just saying. Oh, wow. Yeah, I went there. Anyway.
And that's what I'm all about. I am all about going there. I am the commander of the SS Innuendo.
I like it. That's a nice ship to be on.
Mm-hmm. One of the first games that I streamed was Mass Effect. And I hadn't played it because back in 2007, when Mass Effect came out, I was playing the Witcher games. So my husband ended up playing Mass Effect. I played Witcher. So I streamed my first ever playthrough on it and got so hooked. And that kind of it was Mass Effect that started the ideas percolating for the Two Girls, One Ship podcast.
Of course, with all the different, relationship elements in that game, how could you not have that go through your mind?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So Mass Effect. Now, prior to that, what kind of games were you playing before Mass Effect? So besides, you said The Witcher. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, have you been a gamer your whole life?
I have been. My mom bought us the old school Super Nintendo, and my sister and I would play that every day after school. Then we got our Sega Genesis and our PlayStation and PlayStation 2. I mean, I've had a controller in my hand as long as I can remember.
That is awesome. From the point of view of a guy who grew up in an era where there wasn't very many female gamers, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I didn't know that there were so many gamer girls out there. And it wasn't until joining a lot of the communities that I'm in now that I realized, wow, there are not only a lot more women here than I thought, but there are a lot more women who game like me. I'm totally the bro when it comes to gaming. I am a power gamer. I am a min-maxer. Sometimes I am a rush through the storyline so that way I can hit end game because I want to know that I can beat the game.
It's not always about the lore, man. Sometimes it's about the cha-ching you won.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I was a lot of the ways through one of my early gaming, playing Counter-Strike and things like that. I was about putting you down and being the guy on top teabagging you.
Oh, yeah.
That's just how it was, and especially during that era, because for me, it was a lot of first person shooters. There wasn't a whole lot of storyline going on until, things like Diablo and games like that. Blizzard really pushed the whole story thing to start with, as far as I'm
Mm-hmm.
concerned, with Diablo and StarCraft and games like that. They had kind of a longer, deeper story arc. And then from then on, it just like that genre kind of took off. And to me, that's what really brought out the real creativity in the game industry. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so getting started in the industry of content creation, what was some of the hardest things you had to deal with to begin with, like your hurdles, the things that got in your way right at the beginning? And how did you
Yeah.
get around those?
So I would have to say, like in the beginning, as Switch in Bed, I didn't have very many hurdles. I had my niche. I was, flirtatious streamer who would have fun playing a variety of different video games. The biggest hurdles that I started to hit was once I found my partner in the Two Girls One Ship podcast. And I guess I can take a step back from there and kind of explain who the girls are and what our
Well,
show is about,
that
because
would be good, because some people may not have an idea. They know
Mhm.
they think cyberpunk, they got a good idea. Oh, okay, we know what that is, but what's this Two Girls One Ship and what's it all about?
Yeah. So, Two Girls, One Ship is a podcast where we analyze, rate, and review all that the world of video game romances has to offer. And so, with a nice, clean-ish title like that, you go, okay, so it's a podcast about video game romances. But we really dive into character analysis and then talking about the romance as a whole. And we don't shy away from exploring the fun of fucking. We say that in every episode because it's true. We talk about all the different aspects of relationships that you can have in video games.
Mhm.
Some of them are chaste, some of them are like Fallout 4. You don't ever really get a romance scene with them. You get the little perk when you wake up to next to them in bed, but there's no actual like hot and steamy scene like you would get in Cyberpunk.
No, it's more like The Sims.
Yeah. The Sims has a little bit, it has more graphics than Fallout 4 did.
Yeah, even then, yeah, because it's just like the bed bouncing and then.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
all right, so you didn't have too many hurdles in the beginning of going into that, but what about with the podcast itself?
So with the podcast itself, we definitely have hit a lot of roadblocks because of our content. Now, there's a key distinguishing factor of being labeled an adult content creator. You hear the words adult content creator and you automatically assume I'm doing like some
Porn.
kind of pornography or, I'm selling feet pics online. And it's like, no, that's not what we do at all. I like to say that I create content for adults because, yes, we swear. Yes, we openly and freely talk about sex and we talk the emotional connection between two video game characters. But we're not actually showing anything and we're not doing anything with our personal selves. But unfortunately, the internet is not that nuanced, and neither are a lot of the marketing or social media sites. So the biggest hurdle is that if you were to try and look up Two Girls One Ship on Patreon, you can't find us. We are, yeah, even though we have a Patreon and it's active and there are people who have signed up, you have to actually type out the full web address in order to get to us
Hmm.
because we can't be searched. Um, Sometimes our posts will get taken down on Twitter or Instagram for breaking nudity rules or breaking explicit content laws, even though they are artwork. They are literally, things that people have painted or have like photoshopped together in order to be like, this is how I wish I could see my characters. But most of the characters in video games are human. And so it
Right.
looks like it's pornography.
Yeah, I actually recently, a buddy of mine's a tattoo artist, and he had, what was it? Luis Royo, and Boris Balejo. They're both
Oh, uh-huh.
they're very, very good artists. My buddy did a tattoo of she's kind of like she's standing with her hand like this, and she's got long flowing blonde hair. She's wearing like a armor helmet, and she's barely wearing any clothing. And then there's a bunch of like undeads behind her with swords holding them like this behind her
Hmm.
on this. And he did that as a tattoo on somebody. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Who is that? And he turned me on to the artwork, and it's this Luis Royo, and it's really brilliant artwork, but it is the female form, and it is in, partial nudity, I mean, you can see breasts and nipples and things like that. And it's just beautiful artwork. And I think Twitch has got to kind of learn an equal medium there somewhere,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of brilliant artwork out there. I mean, are they going to make it where you can't see the roof of the Sistine Chapel?
Right?
I mean, you look at the roof of the Sistine Chapel, there's a lot of titties up there, guys. Just saying.
Have you ever seen the statue of David? That's
Right.
out there on full display.
Yeah. He's hanging two BBs in a Tic Tac, but yeah, it's all on him, right? Get that? Is that on him? Anyway, all right.
Nice.
I can't help myself. Anyway, so as far as your show goes, to get more on the technical side of the show stuff, what kind of microphones and do you like to use for your sound quality and things? I mean, do you find that important in your show?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So some people
My
do like they're like, I don't really care. Da, da, da. I'm like, well, I care. I want to
mhm.
sound clear and crisp all the time.
So my first microphone that I used, I was like, it's good enough for gaming. It'll be good enough for podcasting. And boy, was I wrong. Our first couple of episodes are not very good quality, but there's something, if we went back and re-recorded it, we would lose the spark that is the first time that Vervada and I got to chat together. And so there are a lot of special moments in there that we can't go back and re-record.
And Bravada's your co-host, correct? On Two
She's my
Girls One Show.
co-host on Two Girls, yeah. But now I'm using the Yeti Blue. Uh, I picked a microphone that was right in the middle. Something within my price range. And I think that's also a big key factor of when you get started, stay within your price range. Getting the $500 microphone is going to make you sound really good. But if you're not bringing in any income yet, you
Kind of
don't
shooting
need it
yourself in the
yet.
foot, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I started with a snowball, so that was
Yeah.
like $60. Looked like a big old
Mhm.
softball.
Yep.
And then I waited a little while, and I actually got a Shure mic, but it's the SM7B. So it's a USB and the XLR port are together, and it's a lot cheaper than the 7B one that like robots uses. That's like the $500 thing, and this is like $200. So
Hmm.
big difference, really big
Yeah.
difference. But as far as the quality goes, man, I don't think there really is much of it. I don't hear it. Like when I listen to robots and some of the other guys, I think my sound quality is on par with theirs. I just waiting to get the right camera.
Camera, I definitely upgraded also. I upgraded to a Logitech rather than the built-in one on the laptop. And for editing and stuff like that, I'm a basic ass bitch and stuck with Audacity. You know,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
works for me.
Well, see, so I use Audacity for I still use Audacity for a lot of sound, but I've found that I've been using DaVinci Resolve because I do video also. I post all
Mm,
this stuff on YouTube. So I post this
hmm.
on YouTube along with the podcast. So I will do a recording like this on Zoom, and then I'll go ahead and I will edit through DaVinci Resolve. And then any fine tuning I got to do with sound quality, I'll do through Audacity. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's
I
worked out really
haven't
well for me.
I haven't dipped that much into the video editing, even though I have videos of every single episode we've ever done on both shows. Um, it's just something that I find very time consuming. We live stream both shows, each show
Uh-huh.
recording for Two Girls and for Cyberpunk, but going back and posting them up on YouTube later, I'm just like, oh, I don't know. It's not for
So,
me. Maybe
so you live stream both of your shows?
Mhm.
And so now, obviously, they can go back and listen to the shows on like Spotify or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so they have that access. So when you're live streaming, you're doing that on YouTube or on Twitch?
On Twitch.
On Twitch, okay. And so they can just go to your channel on what like certain days and stuff like that, and they'll know that you'll be there at what blah 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 time. Of course, we'll probably
Mhm.
cover that at the end as well. And then they can just sit there along and watch. Yeah. Well, okay. I never thought of really doing it that way, just because I didn't know if anybody would show up. Be four people sitting there going, "Oh, this show's on." I don't know. I haven't
Yeah,
tried that yet.
I love doing the live stream recording of the shows
Mhm.
because, you know, especially on the girls, we are scripted. We type out every word for word what we're going to say. And then of course tangents happen based off of that. Um, but sometimes there's not information that we get wrong, but sometimes there's details that we miss. Or the chat has a major reaction to one of the topics that we bring up, like Miranda from Mass Effect was a big one that caused a lot of like thought provoking ideas. She is one of those characters who is what people would say are built for the man eye candy. She's got the perfect butt. She's got a great boobs. She's got the hourglass figure, and she's made to be genetically perfect. Now you hear about a character like that and you're instantly like, "Oh, it's that girl. She's the hot girl that they just throw into video games." Then we take a look at her and we actually think about everything that's going on in her life before that. Her
She's got depth.
father, yeah, her
Yeah.
father genetically manipulated her. She has been told her whole life, you are the prettiest, strongest, smartest one in this room, so you better live up to those expectations. And then us as the player walks in and goes, "Oh, you're Miss Perfect. I'm not going to like you because you're perfect." And so yet again, we're falling into the exact same feeling that Miranda has felt every day for her life.
And that's what gave her that chip on her shoulder that she shows in the beginning of the games. Because you see
Mm-hmm.
that from her character from the get-go. She's got a chip on her shoulder. And
Oh
then
yeah.
and that chip gets softened over time with Shepard. I actually played, yeah. But
Yay.
yeah, well, yeah. Anybody who hasn't, what's wrong with you? I enjoyed that game a lot. It was one of my favorite games when it came out. And you said you use Audacity for your editing and stuff like that for your software. Is there
Mm-hmm.
anything that you think listeners would really like to know about your show that they haven't that I haven't really touched on that I might miss if I don't ask the question? Something that would really bring light to like what it is, because you're obviously you do a deep dive on the characters. So elaborate a little bit as to what that means, that what you're doing there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you say you're doing a deep dive on the character. In what way exactly? Like just on their emotional state, or
Kind of everything. The most recent character that we recorded just a few days ago was Fenris from Dragon Age 2. And so we go through kind of the lore of everything specifically about the character, where he was born, things that happened as he was growing up, the different types of scenes that we see him in the game, why he is angry, and it was specifically with Fenris, the story behind the markings on his body, things like that. For Fallout, we took each character and talked about, where, like, how did they get to where they are, um, what kind of quest lines you go on with the survivor, what aspects of it change whether or not you decide to be in a relationship with them or not, and then where their storyline goes throughout the game. So for each one, we really talk about everything that happens in game and out of game. So if there's external media, comic books, art books, any other types of novels, we pull all that information together for each character, which is why we have split up our we've split up our shows into different games.
Mhm.
So when we talk about Mass Effect, we only talked about when we talk about Caden. Caden Alenko from the Mass Effect series is in 3 games. If we tried to talk about Caden, that would be like a 2.5, 3 hour long episode. So we broke it up and we only talked about Mass Effect 1 Caden. And then and then later on in the year, we talked about how he shows up in Mass Effect 2. So we condense it down to just the one character in the one game.
That's an incredible deep dive. Yeah. Because I mean, because you could do the show all in one shot, and it may not take 2 hours if you don't dig as deep, but obviously you knew you were going to, so you made sure to separate those things up. That's a good thing to think about, is like when you're doing a show, how far in do you really want to go? And, if you are going in far, you might want to consider doing it in sections like Jennasis has done with her show. That's something to really consider. Okay, folks, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take our mid-break here. I'm going to say thank you to all of our listeners for listening to the show, and thank you to all my Patreon listeners for your support. If you have not yet and would like to, please follow, like, subscribe, and be sure to write me a review for the show so that I can be noticed on the internet and I'm not lonely forever. Tears. Anyway, also send me an email and your comments and questions at ccreatorsguide@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter at ccreatorsguide. I'll be right back after this message and a short clip from today's talent. Thank you.
I'm your host, Maverick Stone.
It's me, Gingerino42.
I'm Romer.
Hey, this is Sassy Lady.
And I'm Jaxus. And we are the Fallout Roundtable. Join us as we explore various topics from the Fallout universe brought from multiple perspectives. We can be found on your favorite podcatchers from Spotify to iTunes, or follow us on Twitter at FalloutRTB or our email falloutrtb@gmail.com. Be sure to rate, follow, and subscribe. Thank you.
Welcome back, folks. Hope you enjoyed the message there. And can you go ahead and set us up with today's clip and let everybody know what we're going to be listening to here?
Yeah, so I decided to give you an exclusive. This is the first, I think, minute and a half of our panel that we did. So the Two Girls, One Ship was invited to the Portland Retro Gaming Con back in October. And we got to do like a full 45-minute panel and discussion about video game romances throughout the decades. So we went back to like the early 80s manga that became the visual novels, and then like how the 90s changed the game, how the early 2000s built the ESRB ratings, and then of course to the epic BioWare level romances that we have in the late 2000s. And so we got to sit down and just gush and talk all about romance. So this is the intro, and so it introduces who Jennasis and Vervada are and what our panel is going to be about, and a little bit about the show.
Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and watch the clip or listen to the clip. I keep saying watch. It's just how I am, I guess. Anyway, here we go.
Hello, and welcome to the Two Girls, One Ships podcast first convention panel, Decades of Digital Love. Today, we will be talking about the steamy, but often obscene history of video game romances. But normally, our podcast, we analyze, rate, and review a specific character from a single game and all that their unique love and romance has to offer. I'm Jennasis, the girl whose motto in life is love, laugh, tequila.
And I'm Vervada, a girl who loves that and loves tits, tats, turians, and tangents. So first, for our presentation, we thought we'd take you through the decades to discuss the general tone of the video game romances in that era, specific games, and major events for video game romance. It's by no means an exhaustive list, because we would be here all day otherwise. And after we get through to present day, we're going to talk about some of the science around video game romance, like how it impacts players, how culture can impact what video game romances are offered, etc. And then lastly, we're going to just briefly talk about where we hope video game romance will go in the future.
But big disclaimer,
we swear. We talk about adult themes and openly talk about sex. So if that's not for you, we're not for you. Oh, and also video games. So if you haven't played the games that we're talking about tonight, sorry, but here's your fucking spoiler alert.
Okay. Yeah. Advisory. Yeah. This is not for your kids. That was actually very, very, very entertaining. I like the comment at the end there. That was really cool.
So that's a little bit of an inside joke now on the show. I reached out to N7 Legend from the Mass Effect lorecast before we started recording Two Girls, One Ship. And I was like, Sam, I need something from you. I know that you have wanted to tell some of the people out there who have complained that you don't give spoiler alerts on your lorecast show. So will you send me a little audio clip of here's your fucking spoiler alert? And he, within minutes, sent it back to me. And so that has been in every episode of The Girls. So Sam's been with us since day one.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is awesome. And he's cool. I love listening to those guys on the lorecast. I follow all of the lorecasts in the network as much as I possibly can. Obviously I can't listen to every episode, but I do try to catch as much as I can from everybody. If no guys don't know, the Robots Radio Network is something we're all part of, and it's also something that can help any new content creator out there. If you go to robotsradio.net and you look on there, there's he's got a class called the Robots Radio Network where he teaches and trains and shows new content creators how to take what they're doing and to build on it and make it stronger and better. And I can't even say how much of a benefit it is to be part of the Robots Radio Network. I mean, without the network, I would not be sitting here right now having this conversation, to be honest. And that Tom's a great mentor, and there's a lot of other great mentors within the network itself. Lawrence and Brad and all those guys. That they're the wealth of knowledge that is immeasurable. So if you guys have an interest in doing any kind of podcasting or anything like that, it actually doesn't matter if it's podcasting or not. It could be podcasting, YouTube videos, Twitch, whatever. Tom has the ability to really teach you how to get yourself out there and be noticed. He's got the background in the marketing department and all that kind of stuff, and he's brilliant in that way. So yeah, check out robotsradio.net if you're interested in those kinds of things. And enough of the soapbox for the Robots Radio Network. Ching. Anyway, so what went through your head when you came up with the name for your show?
Oh geez. Okay, so for starters, when I did it, when I created my list, I didn't know exactly what my show was going to be about because I thought that it would just be me talking Mass Effect romances because those were the ones that I was most comfortable, most familiar with, and based off of that, because I started listening to the Mass Effect lorecast and fell in love with all of the lore behind the game, and I just really wanted to talk about the romance aspect of it. So when I started making my list of ideas, I only had Mass Effect in mind. So some of them are a little bit weird and out there. But I'll actually just go through a couple of my favorite ones. Love, Lust, and Lore was another idea because I was like, there's loving relationships, lusty relationships, and I do want to talk about the lore of the game. Naughty bits or naughty bites. Because, like video game pixels and bytes. That works. Will our love survive the end of this game? I thought that was just an interesting question.
It's a wordy one, but it does kind of lead you into where you're going. I get that. Yeah. And that's one of the things that Tom will teach you is how to utilize your title to be descriptive, to say exactly what you're about.
Yep.
And that's and makes perfect sense. Sometimes it's not about how cool the name sounds, and sometimes it's just plain Jane. Content creators, good. Doesn't sound very exciting, but it gets to the point.
hmm Cyberpunk Lorecast.
Yeah.
We all know what that's about.
Yeah. But that
Uh,
is really interesting so far. Yeah. Huh.
Beauty is in the eye of the controller.
And that is something you guys also say a lot. I've heard that on your commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And we picked that one to kind of be our tagline, our motto of the show, just because it's like you are the one
It
with the
sounded
controller in your
cool.
hand. Yeah, it
It
sounds
sounded
cool.
cool.
Uh, but then I reached out to Ravada over Discord, and it works so much better as a duo. And then our name started to slip over to like the two of us being together, things like that. And so that's when two girls, one ship came up, and we went with that one because it is the two of us girls, and we're talking about one relationship.
Right.
That is where the ship part comes from.
So
It doesn't have anything to do with Normandy.
and so your cyberpunk lorecast, what got you into that?
Oh, that is all toasty. So Thanatoasted, my partner on there, my co-host, he had been a
I love
long time.
watching the Witcher lorecast, so I'm
Mhm.
familiar with Toasty.
Yeah. So Toasty hosts the Witcher Lorecast, another CDPR game with Tom of the network. And Tom had been running the Cyberpunk Lorecast with Captain Logan of the Sea of Thieves podcast for a couple of years. They were already 3 years into it, but then Cyberpunk kind of died off. They hadn't announced any of the DLCs. They hadn't announced Edge Runners yet. They hadn't really done a lot with it. But then Edge Runners came out and it picked up really fast. And Steam was showing that over 1 million people a day were playing Cyberpunk again. And so Tom was like, I can't take Cyberpunk back on because his Lord of the Rings lorecast has blown up.
Yeah, it's kind of overshadowed even the Fallout lorecast, which was his baby.
Mhm.
And it's an incredible show. I mean, it's really draws you in. It's really thought provoking, and he's always got great insights. And Tom's just a great conversationalist. So when he's
Right.
in there having those conversations, and to me, even though he's talking to himself, essentially, he's having a conversation with everybody that's there, and he can
Mhm.
have those conversations and make you feel like you're having that one-on-one with him while he's explaining the things that he's explaining as far as the lore and things of that nature. So it's really, really good show. And if you like Lord of the Rings, definitely should check that out.
Mhm.
Okay. That's interesting though. I didn't even because I haven't listened to a lot of the Cyberpunk game because I haven't played that one yet. It
Ah.
was broken for me. That's what I got. It's broken. It's broken. Well, it was broken for me because my computer couldn't run it.
Mm.
So I'm like, okay, I gotta wait until my machine's good enough. And then by the time my machine was good enough, I was on the fence still. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to throw $60 at this right now. I'll just let it ride for a while. So I'm still planning on checking the game out, but I have listened to a few episodes of the Lorecast and caught the fact that Toasty was part of that. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. So Toasty and I have known each other for about a year now. Because I too joined on the Witcher Lorecast Patreon, and we met through there, and we've just instantly bonded. He's totally my beast mode bro now, and I love him. So when Tom said, hey Toasty, do you want to take over the Cyberpunk Lorecast? Um, he was like, hell yeah, I'll do it. And then he's like, I want Jen. I want Jen as my partner in this. And so he reached out, and I was like, hell yeah, dude, I'm in. Let's do it.
That's cool, man. It's always good when you can do something like that with somebody you actually legit see as a friend, because
Mhm.
it's so much more comfortable of a dynamic to have that conversations.
Oh,
So what do you think is a question that new content creators fail to ask those who have been in the game for a while? Like it doesn't cross their mind, and that they probably should ask this question.
I don't know if it's something that it needs to be asked to another creator, but something that you need to ask to yourself. And that is, how long do you want your show to go on? So I didn't have that in mind when I thought of the idea of a relationship podcast. I was just like, I'm going to cover the events of Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, and then Andromeda, and I'll be done. So that's like maybe a year's worth of content.
Mhm.
But it wasn't until Vervada was like, no, there's Dragon Age, there's Fallout, there's Cyberpunk, there's, our list is so long now. We have content scheduled all the way out to 2024.
Nice.
So I think,
And
and I
you guys could
definitely
always
should have.
branch out of the game genre elements and get into things like anime, like you were talking about. I mean, unless you have already done that. I don't know. But I mean,
Not so much, but then again, there are new games released every year. Dragon
right.
Age,
Mhm.
Dreadwolf is scheduled to come out soon, and that's obviously going to have romance in it. So that's a whole nother season worth of episodes to go through. The next Mass Effect game is going to come out, and we'll have those romances.
The
And
next
then, of
Elder
course,
Scrolls.
the next Elder Scrolls, and hopefully there is more romance in there. Skyrim has got a couple, but I don't think I can.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe the next Fallout game is going to have enhanced romances in it as well. So we've definitely got enough content to last us for a long time. And then we branched out from there and started interviewing game developers. So going behind the scenes and finding out what it's like to write these characters that we can play as in the romances. And so that has definitely opened up a lot of more avenues to go down.
Interesting. And then what about, I'm sure you got plans on checking out Starfield and seeing if it's got anything interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the same company, so there's hoping there's still some good story in there.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, what was my next question? I'm getting lost on my page here. Yes, I pre-write some questions. Don't judge me. Anyway. What do you got coming up next, and how can people reach you?
Yes, what we have going on right now. So right now we're wrapping up the year and we have 2 interviews coming out soon. I already gave you an exclusive, so I'm not going to give you the names of our upcoming people, but they are both female game developers who have heavily written and influenced romances in some pretty big games. And then we've got 2 Patreon episodes where anybody at a certain tier or higher can come on and join the show and talk about some sexy type of topic related to video games. And then we have Anders from Dragon Age 2 and Sebastian, a DLC character in Dragon Age 2 that not a lot of people know about, who is also a romance option. And then we're going to cover the Uncharted series because that is a really long relationship from a husband and wife over 4 different games but it's just the one relationship. So we're going to go through what long-term love looks like in a video game setting.
And so, have you had any kind of strange impacts from doing? I mean, you're obviously adultish content. Have you had any weird interactions or anything like that might have been a little bit off?
Surprisingly, it's been pretty tame.
Mm.
There are the people who have been like, ew, why are you talking about this? Okay, we're not for you. Goodbye.
Right. Yeah. No. So what about like the adult content community? Anything from that realm? I mean,
So I'm in a couple of adult content creator discords and things like that, because if I'm going to be labeled it, I'm going to lean into it and I'm going to learn from both sides of the field, how to create a good podcast from the Robots Radio Network, how to do like the audio and the editing and the, like titling your episodes, things like that. But then I'm also going to learn from the how have people gotten over these hurdles of being labeled adult content, or how to get over the things
that was kind of where I was going, is like, because if you are labeled in the genre of, I hate to say pornography, but adult content these other genres of adult content may be able to help in regards to getting the word out there in the way that it doesn't really hinder your ability to get noticed.
Yeah. And I also want to highlight them
Mhm.
because I'm not afraid of that. I'm not ashamed of being labeled that.
Mhm.
And so I want to work with them. I'm actually in contact with somebody who specifically their voice acting skills are all about the breathy moans. That she specifically does sex noises only. And but then the dialogue, some of the dialogue that goes along with that. And it's like, I want to highlight you. I'll bring you onto this show so that way you can talk about what it's like to be a voice actor.
Yeah.
So
I do voice acting, just not that kind. All right. So my final question for you is, what key takeaway would you like the listeners to get from your time here today?
Don't be afraid to own your space. I was worried in the beginning that I would be kind of blacklisted or that nobody would really want to listen to somebody talk about sex so openly and freely. Or, it's like, oh no, I don't want my girlfriend to walk in while I'm watching this, Liara scene. Well, you know what? I'm here to do that. I'm here to talk about it because it's fascinating. It's an aspect of so many different people's lives, and it shouldn't be hidden.
I remember when I was a kid, I used to listen to Dr. Ruth Westheimer, you're on KFI. And she was a doctor who talked about sexual things. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I started listening because I was a little kid. And I was like, ooh, she said the word sex. And then after listening for a while, I'm like, this is making me think.
Yeah.
It was making my brain
Dr.
work.
Ruth
And
is great.
yeah, and and I was young, but at first it was like horny little kid. I want to hear some dirty stuff. It wasn't dirty; it was informative, and it made me look at things in a very different way, and kind of matured me quite a bit as a young man. I was like, oh wow, but yeah, Dr. Ruth Westheimer when I was a kid. You wouldn't think that it would be something that a kid should be listening to, but in reality, she kind of laid things out in a way that made it where I understood better and I made less mistakes.
And I love the educational part of it. So I went to college for sexual psychology. That was my part of my plan, was to become a therapist. Didn't work out that way, but I'm using a lot of that now in our scripting, in our dialogue. There was one romance scene where what I saw as unprovoked aggression, where this warrior man throws his partner up against the wall out of kind of an anger moment. You startled me, you grabbed at my arm, now you've thrown me up against the wall. And then immediately they start making out and it goes into the scene. And I'm like, I'm going to put my hands up here and I'm going to call a stop on this scene because I don't want it to be violence is hot. So let's go with it. No, we need to have the open conversation that if there was prior consent to I like rough play, then that's okay for it to happen in the video game. But at that point, there was no conversation about it. There was no consent to it. All we see is a strong male character throwing, the character is bisexual, so you could play as either male or female character on your own side, but throwing his partner up against the wall and immediately leading into sex.
It was sexual aggression, regardless of the sex of the person. It doesn't,
Right.
The individual doesn't matter in that regard. It's more or less that there was sexual violence happening, and that's never really okay. Even with consent and things of that nature, role playing, yeah, okay, but there's boundaries, and you got to make sure those
Yeah.
boundaries are well defined.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's a game that we haven't talked about yet where those outlines are clearly defined. And I am so excited to talk about that one because you go into this relationship knowing that this is going to be an aspect. If you don't want to be in a dynamic where there is violence, where there is aggression, then we're going to say no and we're not going to get into a sexual relationship. And I'm like, this is done so right and so good that I have to call out the bullshit that has happened in previous games because we've learned that it can be done right. So we need to say no to the ways that it was done wrong before.
Excellent. Well, that's going to do it. You guys got to hear it here. This is what she's all about. This is what her show is all about. And if you enjoyed what you've heard here, please take the time, listen to her shows, check it out. Cyberpunk Lorecast, if you're interested in cyberpunk lore, but I think we more highlighted on the Two Girls, One Ship here because we wanted to make sure that people understood that how you can create adult content, or is that right? You can create adult content. You're creating content for adults. You're not creating adult content. Does that make more sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that's going to do it with us tonight. And I'm going to get out of here. Keep creating. Bye-bye.
And always remember, beauty is in the eye of the controller.
This podcast is part of the Robots Radio Rocket Club, a program designed to help all podcasts reach their full potential. For information about joining the Robots Radio Rocket Club, check out robotsradio.net.